All right, welcome everybody. Section 40. Gear. Um yeah, you start off by cutting a whole bunch of angle aluminum. Um I was using a temperature gun there just to make sure that I wasn't warping it because that stuff is stout. You go through half your polishing wheel just to get it somewhat deburred. And now comes the really fun part. I'm not gonna lie to you. This was horrendous. Well, not this part in particular. Getting the gear leg up through and situated properly, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like I probably was using sandpaper 90% of the time. Just put the gear leg in, figure out how much of the powder coat was rubbing up against the mounting surfaces, take it off, redo. Oh, before we get into that, here I am putting the rubber on. Um, from what I read, for the most part, because I am just like everybody else doing this, well, I'm just like most people, or at least the people watching this channel, doing this for the first time. Everybody says you can't use too much talcum powder, so I bought a giant industrial sized bag, took the bottom of one of my wife's potting plants off of it, and then just used that to powder up the inner tubes. I wish I was going with Behringer. I just couldn't pull the trigger on that price. I'm sure I will be frustrated with myself later. Steve at Aerosport. No. Why am I saying that wrong? Aircraft Specialties. Steve at Aircraft Specialties is a phenomenal person to talk to. I asked him whenever I was trying to decide what I was going to do, I asked him, and here's the part where you're putting on the gear leg a million times, taking off powder coat. The aircraft is walking all over on me. Don't worry, everybody, it is stable. But anyways, Steve was phenomenal. I think it was at Oshkosh that I was talking with him in person, but he's just as great on the phone too. I asked him, what if I decided to go with the Behringer wheels and brakes after the fact? I asked him if I would have to change out the cylinder slaves inside the aircraft, and he said that Behringer will tell you absolutely you have to. He said that he has done this many a times for many a customers, and for the most part, as best as he can tell, you lose about 20% braking efficiency. He said it's going to be a lot better than the stock, but you lose a little bit of braking efficiency. But to have tubeless tires, it's completely worth it. He said that you can still use his same stock lines. There'll just be a fitting in there that changes from NPT to something else for Behringer. But he said, other than that, no, you don't need to go inside the aircraft and change out all the cylinders, slaves, and stuff like that to make that work. And I'm sure I'm botching terms here, but with that said, I just figured I'd run stock, and then if I really want to get away from tubed wheels, and I am feeling like I need an upgrade for braking power, I'll just switch over to that. Here we are getting the second gear leg in, and again, it is just an arduous process. I'm not sure if other people have had as much trouble as I have had with it, but it certainly wasn't particularly fun. Then after that, yeah, it's just getting the axles on, and then here I am doing lines. The lines I found particularly fiddly. Fiddly is the word I'm going to go with. Oh, yes, safety wiring the brakes. But yeah, engine mount. Before I do the engine mount, you're going to want to look at OP62. That is how you essentially figure out where I'm going to call it like the eyeball type thing, but it's a eyeball mounting section. So yeah, you essentially open up this space, put the eyeball mount in so that you don't have to do that once everything else is connected up. Because as you can see already, just with the engine mount on there, it's a lot tougher. So make sure and get in there to OP62, do that portion of it right now. Yeah, and so then figuring out the way that the brake lines are supposed to bend, et cetera, and then a lot of people, even Vans, says use this Gorilla Tape to hold the lines up and down the legs. And then here comes the worst part, bleeding brakes. I don't know what it is. If somebody said the only way that you can make money for the rest of your life is bleeding brakes, I think I would just be fine with starving. Or foraging for my own food, because I don't know what it is about bleeding brakes, and I've always felt like was trash at it. And then my A&P buddy, the first thing he asked me whenever I said I've got it on gear was, "Have you bled the brakes?" And when I was able to reply in the affirmative, he was shocked, which made me feel good about myself. But I bought an entire gallon of brake fluid, and in that gallon, I think I had less than a cup left, just because we tried every way. We tried top to bottom, bottom to top, sideways, whatever. It was really, really tough to get good brake pressure on both brakes. With the caveat being, the parking brake that I bought from Steve at Aero Specialties, I didn't tighten the banjo nut properly. I was probably about 20 inch-pounds shy. So I believe that somehow we were introducing, and I only found this out because eventually it started to leak into the cabin. There was like 2 tiny drops below it. Then I realized, okay, that's not torqued properly. So I believe somehow we were introducing air in everything that we were doing. So, pro tip, maybe it helps somebody out there. If you are bleeding the brakes and they just will not bleed, maybe check the lines. I don't know if I would have found it immediately, but anyways, nose wheel goes on. Setting the torque isn't too bad. It's just something you're going to have to do like 18 different times, because eventually it's going to run out of torque from what I hear. But yeah, other than that, I guess we'll move on to the next section. See you there.